The Dendro Archon is back, but with Lauma completely changing the Dendro meta, is Nahida still worth it? In this quick guide, we'll break down exactly how good she is in this stage of the game. We'll cover her talents, best weapons, artifacts, teams and constellations, and take a look at her value compared to Lauma to see if she's still worth your precious Primogems. Hello, welcome to Genshin Filter, your quick guide for everything Genshin. So let's get started! Nahida is a 5-star Dendro Catalyst user, who is mostly played as an off-field sub-DPS that provides strong Dendro application, buffs elemental mastery and enables some of the strongest reactions in the game. Her normal and charge attacks are standard infused catalyst attacks, and are not important to her playstyle unless you use her as an off-field driver, and even then they are mainly used to apply more Dendro to the enemies rather than deal any serious damage. Her elemental skill is the heart of her kit. You can both press or hold it to mark the enemies and link them together, and whenever they take any Dendro reaction damage, try Karma Purification will trigger to deal extra damage to all linked enemies. The mark lasts a long time and also does good damage. The big flaw in this skill is that once the enemies are defeated and a new wave spawns, you'll need to swap back to Nahida to reapply the mark. This can really hurt your rotation, especially in AoE or with characters who cannot leave the field once they enter their enhanced infused state. This is a big factor that makes Lauma much better, since she doesn't have this issue and will keep applying Dendro on the new enemies even from off-field. Her elemental burst creates the Shrine of Maya, a massive dome that gives bonuses based on the character elements in your party and how much of each element you have. Electro increases the frequency of her Tri-Karma Purification. Hydro extended duration of the burst, and Pyro increases the damage of Nahida's skill Tri-Karma Purification. Her Ascension 1 gives the active character inside a burst up to 250 elemental mastery, based on the character in your party with the highest amount of EM, which is usually Nahida herself, and it caps at 1000 TM. This massive buff is one of the most important advantages Nahida still has, and it's what keeps her relevant next to Lauma in certain teams, which we'll break down more when we get to our team section. Her Ascension 4 makes her skill Tri-Karma Purification deal up to 80% more bonus damage and gain 24% crit rate based on her elemental mastery, also capping at 1000 TM. Her exploration passive lets her harvest plants with her skill, which is very unique and handy to use. It can also read the thoughts of the Sumeru NPCs, which is a cool touch. For her talent priorities, focus on her skill first, since it enables all of her damage and application, then her burst for its buffs, and her normal attacks can be ignored unless you plan to use her own field. For rotations, because her talents have long duration, you'd usually want to swap to Nahida first, and start by holding a skill and doing a quick 360 to mark all the enemies. Then cast her burst for its buffs and swap to the rest of your teammates. Make sure to reapply her skill when a new wave of enemies spawns if you have the option. Her signature weapon, 1000 Floating Dreams, is her best in slot, giving her a lot of elemental mastery and damage bonus buffs, as well as sharing EM with the rest of the team. But really any catalyst that provides elemental mastery will also be a great option for her, since the main focus is simply stacking as much EM as possible, and you really can't go wrong with that. You can also use Favonius Codex for teams that need more energy, Prototype Ember if you need extra healing in Furina teams, or even Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers if you want to provide good attack buff for your own fielder. Just keep in mind that in most rotations you will use Nahida at the start, and not right before you swapping to your main DPS, so the TDDS is a bit less energistic. But sticking with the EM option is usually the best way to go. If you plan to use her on field, her EM options are still relevant, but any offensive crit catalyst will also work well to give her more personal damage through her normal and charge attacks. Her best artifact set, hands down, is the 4-piece Deepwood Memories, which increase her Dendro damage and also shreds the Dendro resistance on enemies by 30%. If someone else is already holding Deepwood or the team does not focus on Dendro damage like in Aggravate teams, then Nahida can instead run the Gilded Dream or the Golden Troop for more personal damage. For the main stats on the Sand, go for Elemental Mastery or Energy Recharge. Around 130 ER is a good place to aim for, and you can usually get it from substats pretty easily. On the Goblet, go with EM or Dendro damage bonus, and on the Circlet, go with EM or crit rate or damage. Going with full EM pieces to try to reach 1000 TM is more recommended, since it maximizes her team EM buff while also improving her personal skill damage. This makes the offensive stats very similar in damage but without the EM buff, which is why it's less recommended in my eyes. For substats, make sure you have enough energy recharge to boast consistently. Then get as much elemental mastery as you can to maximize your passives, followed by crit rate and damage as well as attack percent and flat attack. Nahida is one of the best options for all the Dendro reactions, which range from some of the strongest to some of the weakest teams in the game. So let's break them down and also look at how Lauma compares to Nahida in each of them. Her best teams for each Dendro reaction from best to worst are Neuvillette Hyperbloom, Nilou Bloom, Alhaitham Spread, Neuvillette Burgeon, Spread and Aggravate, and Neuvillette Burning. Lauma is completely power crept and replaced Nahida in all the Bloom related reaction teams, but that doesn't mean Nahida is bad. She still works great with those teams, and when it comes to the non-Bloom reactions, Nahida is still on top. In Hyperbloom and Burgeon, Lauma is the best option since she gives a very strong buff to both. But Nahida is still a great choice in those teams, especially if your on-fielder is also the Electro or Pyro driver, thanks to a huge elemental mastery buff. There is also the Quick Bloom option, where the Hydro application is slower and the damage is split between Hyperbloom and Spread or Aggravate. If this team leans more towards Spread, then Lauma is probably still the better option, because she also provides Dendro Resistance Shred on top of her Hyperbloom buff. But if the team is more focused on Aggravate, then Nahida's buff is much more effective, making her the strongest choice there. On Bloom teams with Nilou, Lauma once again raises this team far beyond what Nahida alone can do, and single-handedly makes it one of the strongest teams in the game. That is very impressive considering the team is mostly AoE focused, yet it can still deal very competitive single target damage. At the moment though, the best version of this team actually runs both Lauma and Nahida together, so she still has a place there. And even without Lauma, while the damage will be significantly lower, this team with Nahida can still perform very well in AoE content, where this team is built to shine. When it comes to pure Spread or Aggravate, this is where Nahida still shines the most, and their Elemental Mastery buff becomes much more valuable. Lauma only provides some Dendro resistance shreds here, which is nice for Spread teams, but not nearly as impactful as it is in Quick Bloom. And in Aggravate specifically, Nahida is outright better and probably the best option overall. Burning is another place where Nahida is usually the better option, although the reaction itself is weak on its own. Where it becomes useful is firstly in teams with Kenichi and Emily, but in those cases the real damage comes from the burning reaction buffing their kit rather than the burning damage itself, and because of that Nahida's buff does not synergize well with those teams. The second way to use burning that actually does work with Nahida is in Vaporize and Reverse Melt teams. In these teams, the burning aura helps keep the pyro on the enemies for longer, which makes it much easier to consistently trigger those strong reactions. That makes it a valuable niche for Nahida and her EM buff, in a team where the overall damage can still be very good. Now let's quickly break down her constellations to see if they're worth investing in. C1 expands her burst, so one character is counted as two characters of the same element, to max the burst buffs more easily. C2 is the big one, as it allows all Dendro reactions to crit and also applies defense reduction, which significantly raises the team damage. C3 gives extra skill levels, which means a bit more personal damage. C4 grants additional elemental mastery when multiple enemies are linked, which gives you room to build her more offensively in her artifacts. C5 raises her burst levels, making her reaction buffs a bit better. And C6 turns her into an on-field carry, by making the normal and charge attacks trigger rapid high-scaling Dendro skill strikes on all linked enemies up to 10 seconds. She works great at C0, but her C2 is a huge power increase for her team, and is definitely a better investment than her signature weapon, since she already has a lot of great alternatives there. The funny thing to note is that C0 Lauma already provides a similar crit buff to Nahida's C2, which adds a lot to Lauma's value over Nahida. But the cool thing as well is that if you get both Lauma and Nahida C2, their crit value actually stack together to give you 35% crit rate on all Dendro reactions, which really impacts their damage when used side by side. So, is Nahida still worth it? The truth is, Lauma completely overshadowed her when it comes to Bloom related reaction teams, and also has much better uptime on her application, thanks to her skill not needing to be refreshed when a new waves of enemies spawns. Lauma at C0 actually gives you more than what Nahida provides at C2. And if you have Lauma at C1, which also adds healing, then she's pretty much a combination of C2 Nahida and Baju without his shield, all in one character. This completely power creeps not just Nahida, but every other Dendro character in the game. However, because Lauma does not buff Spread, Aggravate, and teams that use Burning to enable reactions, Nahida remains a solid choice there, thanks to a massive elemental mastery buff to their own fielder. So if you are asking who to get, Lauma or Nahida, the answer is Lauma 99% of the time. Even though Nahida still has a niche in some teams, those teams does not considered as strong as the Bloom related comps these days. You should only get her if you play Nilou teams already has Lauma and want Nahida to make that team even better. Or if your teams are focused around Spread or Aggravate and you really want to invest into them. Or if you are simply an Archon collector. And if you already have Nahida, getting Lauma is an upgrade, but I only recommend it if you have teams that focus around Bloom related reactions, or if you plan on getting Nefer in the next version. And that's a wrap. If this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like or subscribe for more Field the Guides. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!